What do most salespeople have in common with most of the doctors from the 1840s? Well, this is a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. Both have been victim of the Semmelweis reflex. What is that? Well, Semmelweis bias. It is named after a doctor from the 1840s that basically found empirical evidence that if you wash your hands and you show proof of sanitation for surgery, for giving birth, or anything like that, risk of infection dramatically goes down. However, doctors at the time refused this empirical evidence and said it goes against the common wisdom. That reflex of refusing new knowledge is something that every human will suffer through. Now, in the matter of sales, how do I come across that parallel? It is a question of perception. It is a very interesting subject that I want to dive into today. So if you're expecting a quick fix or a quick win, this isn't one. As usual, I take my freaking sweet time in making those videos because I want you guys to elevate and learn new things that will bring your pitch, your understanding of your own reflexes and reasoning when you're meeting clients to elevate. Now, I think an interesting part of it would be to attack something that affects all of us. If we're in sales, we're intrinsically interested in the reward or in the financial aspect of it, because when you work in sales, your work will directly impact your bottom line. Your output, how many sales you generate, will generate some commissions. Now, I have noticed, right now I'm sure I can see it on the side of the right of the screen with all the recommended videos that you're seeing me next to, that there's a disproportionate disconnection between the perception of wealth and success and reality. Now, if I ask, and I'm going to use the United States here as a reference because most of my viewers are from the US, if I ask you, what do you think the top 5% of income earners, or how much people are paid in the top 5% in the US? Are you going to think, wow, it's going to be like, hundreds of millions or millions of dollars or tens of millions or anything like that? That answer will be wrong. As a matter of fact, if you are in the, let's say, top 3%, you're making about $250,000 a year. This is not from me, this is from the official Bureau of Statistics. I'm using, by the way, the 2021 census data, so it's a bit outdated, but we're going to use that as a reference. So we're going to say $250,000. You're in the top 3% of income earners in the US. Now, if you're in the bottom, let's say 8%, I think the number was. Sorry, I'm doing this after a long day of work. Your annual income is $15,000. All right? So, top 3%, you make $250,000 a year. Top 8%, you're making $15,000. Yet, I'm sure that the majority of you probably thought it was into the 6 figures or in the 7 figures, multi-7 figures. What you're probably thinking about, if you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or any of the big industrialists or any of the billionaires you're thinking of, those guys are the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. As a matter of fact, I think billionaires in the US, there's 800 of them. 800. And the reality is, the perception is you're comparing yourself right now, your wealth, your success, everything you're trying to do, you're perceiving yourself to the very best out there. The reality, however, is if you make more than $250,000, you're ahead of 97% of the population in the US. Does it not sound suddenly very good? But yet, we want to be ahead of 99.99% of the videos. If I look at any of the recommended side on the videos on the side, they promise you, $30,000 a week, $3,000 an hour, whatever it is. Use ChatGPT for this. The reality, however, from a statistical point of view is, if everyone, let's say one of those videos has 250,000 views, those 250,000 views lead to people making that much income per day or per hour as they claim? No. The reality is probably a very small proportion of them are doing that. So in terms of reality check, I think one of the things to show you the difference between our perception and the data beyond income is something we all want: rewards. Now, I'm going to use a very strong status symbol here to make a point. Rolex. Everybody wants a watch, a fancy watch, because it's a status symbol. It looks like we've succeeded. We want to reward ourselves. Extrinsically, meaning for the rest of the world, we want to show we have made it successfully in financially speaking. We want to be perceived as rich. That's the perception of buying a Rolex. Intrinsically, well, I don't really know why you would spend a couple $1,000s for a watch that can tell you the time equally as well as a watch for $10 on Amazon or AliExpress. But intrinsically, it's a status symbol. So I'd say most of it is weighed towards the message you send to the rest of the world. Now, if I ask you the same question as for the income, you're going to probably think, you know, Rolexes, most people that own a Rolex are rich people. Most people that are making, let's be kind, let's say they're in the top 3%. For reference, by the way, Rolex makes 1 million watches a year, give or take. And ballpark figures, I think 30% of the world's watches, luxury watches, are Rolex being sold. So I think in the US, you'd be looking at the same kind of weight. Is there a correlation between income and owning a Rolex? Do you buy a Rolex when you've made it? That's your perception. The reality, and this is not based on me, this is based on the annual reports and the studies of luxury brands or luxury watches. If I take someone that makes over $100,000, all right, that's I think top 10 or top 12% of the US in terms of income, all right? The likelihood of you owning, and please correct me for a second, I just need to check my numbers to make sure. Yeah, so let's take the top 3% because I already have it on the board. Top 3% of income earners in the US, how many in percentage do you think own a Rolex, give or take? 80, 90, you're thinking, wrong. It's 26%, all right? That's based on the survey, right? If I look at people that are in the income group where they are median income, so we're sitting at about 30 to 45K a year, all right, dollars. What do you think the likelihood of them owning a Rolex is? You might think, 1, 2, 3% or anything like that, right? Because, you know, they're not successful. I mean, by any stretch of the imagination, if you make $30,000 to $45,000, you know, you're not going to be, you know, buying Ferraris and, you know, private jets and flying first class, right? Just by rule of imagination. One first class ticket, I think, is like $8,000, $10,000 for reference. So I'm going to give you 1 second. So you're probably thinking single digits, and you'd be wrong. It's actually around 13%. All right. So your perception, I've just showed you now with the median income, that 13% of people in the median income own a Rolex. Are they, by any stretch of the imagination, statistically or perception-wise, into the wealthy category? No. Now let's go a little bit higher between the 45 and 95K segment. Guess what the percentage is? It's higher than this. It's 33%, give or take, about 28 to 33%, because it's a large income group. So the perception that we have as consumers is you buy a Rolex, you're a rich guy. We want to be perceived as rich. The data, however, the reality is you're someone that's sitting in the top 30% of income earners in the US. So you're not the wonderful 3%, you're not the wonderful 0.1%, you're really the wonderful 50 or 40%. As a matter of fact, I think all the way to the smallest income group, there is a perception that people, well, there is a purchasing trend of people buying Rolexes. So you're not really being perceived as rich because, well, first of all, they make $1 million a year. So does that, you know, luxury means rarity? So no. But that was just an easy one to show the perception of that we have is completely different than the reality. So if you want to buy a fancy watch and be perceived as rich, rarity is much better for value's sake. But in terms of perception, well, Rolex might still be it. Anyway, that's not a video to bash Rolex by any things, stretch of the imagination. It's a great business model, great marketing strategy. Cannot say bad things about them by any stretch of the imaginations. But so when you look at the goals you put yourself, Rolex is a very good example. You've put a lot of emphasis into buying something to try and be perceived in a certain way when the reality is very different. Imagine how that applies to your profession, all right? Now, I've just showed you that income bracket wise, it's the same thing. You're already ahead of the game. So when you're putting yourself so much pressure in your day-to-day, just remember that the difference between someone that is sitting at the bottom of the food chain in terms of income in the US and someone that's sitting ahead of 97% of people money-wise, not in terms of accomplishment, not in terms of happiness, not in terms of everything else, the difference is $235,000 a year. Now, the fucked up part, and I'm going to swear here voluntarily, is the difference between you sitting at the 3% and you sitting at the 0.1%, 1%, is $3 million. Someone that sits in the top 0.1% makes $3 million a year. So the disparity is non-linear. if once again it seems like if you watch some of my other videos, if you start seeing the same oscillations, the same nonlinear growth, etc., and the same trends, you're not sleeping. It is correct. Growth is nonlinear. Income disparity is nonlinear as well. Now, one of the key areas, and frankly speaking, it kind of pisses me off. It really pisses me off, as a matter of fact, because if I spend as much time watching all the videos about trying to improve your business, trying to improve your skills, etc., a lot of it is built around giving you the false idea that you're going to be successful by wearing the attributes of a successful individual. Maybe, just maybe, if you're familiar with that industry, you might see that people are talking to you about taking cold showers, or journaling, or meditating, or training, or all sorts of routines and exercises. Now, I'm not advocating not to work out, not to sleep numbers of hours, not to eat healthy, not to drink water. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if you think that because you're eating your vegetables, taking a shower, and meditating, you're going to be a millionaire, no. You're just like, it's a survivor bias. I mean, I invite you, if you don't believe me, look at every single, billionaire is like such a sample size, but look at the average rich guy on social media. Does he look particularly healthy? Does he look like he's doing all these things? I personally do not know any guy who makes that kind of money, that has an hour to spend every day journaling, that does all these things. You don't have freaking time. You're fully dedicated to your business. So stop focusing between the perception of success, which is, perfect bodies, people that are meditating and journaling and doing all these things, and the reality. The reality is people are you need to be lucky, first of all. Nobody will ever mention that on the side videos because it's not sexy and it's not really encouraging. But the attributes of success do not guarantee success. What does guarantee success is consistency and compounded interest. You're doing the same thing successfully for a long period of time. It's not sexy, it will piss you off, you will probably disagree in the comments, Semmelweis reflex, as I just mentioned. But remember, once you're trying to improve, do not look at what people are doing to be successful from a visuals perspective or perceptions perspective, but look at their actual actions of what generates that success. This video is very unusual for me, but first of all, I've been pissed off the whole day, so I kind of wanted to vent a little bit with you guys and girls. But more importantly, it's just to transfer a little bit of that perception check, because it changed my life when it happened. I thought it's all about the fast cars, it's all about the bling, it's all about the cool stuff, it's all about being ripped, it's all about all this stuff, when in reality, it isn't. Any successful person that I've ever met, whether they're successful in sports, in finances, in lifestyle, in their families or anything like that, it is all about that hard work. It's all about that effort that they do, not once, not twice, but consistently over a long period of time. All right, I've discussed quite a lot the compounded interest, let's say, if you invested money in the stock market, but it works the same way for fitness. It works the same way for your job. It works the same way when you're in sales. So rather than trying to constantly try and perceive yourself as the future Jeff Bezos, or comparing yourself and feeling miserable because everyone on social media is trying to flex, compare yourself to yourself. Have a goal in mind, and then retro-engineer it, like I explained in last week's topic, how to get there. What does it actually mean, and how long will it take you to get there? If you're just putting a number out there, if you're just doing something out there, and you can't really commit to it because you haven't broken down how you're doing it, then your perception is, oh yeah, I'm going to become this thing. But the reality is you're not moving anywhere. Motion creates emotion. All right? Cool. Bye.